his own side, and at 1:30 this morning, number 10 suggested in fact that it was, and then the Transport Secretary told Kay Burley a few hours ago that it wasn't. We know the Prime Minister is infamous for her U-turns. This is beyond a joke. If it was a vote of confidence, when will the Prime Minister be removing the whip from her rebels? I also notice that the government has pulled our next opposition day. I can't think why, after yesterday, that they might do that. Are they punishing us for their chaos and their incompetence last night? Is the leader aware of Standing Order 14, which allocates 17 days to the leader of the official opposition party? They are falling behind, so will the government be giving us an opposition day on the week commencing the 7th of November? Mr Deputy Speaker, I'm glad the leader actually has some business to announce, given their complete inability to function. As well as chaos, we've got a raft of dropped legislation, broken promises, unmet manifesto commitments, and she can't blame the British people for asking what is the point of this government. Don't just take it from me. The former Home Secretary mentioned the very thing in her letter, raising concerns about the government breaking key pledges to voters, failing to honour their manifesto commitments. Someone had their Weetabix, or was it tofu, for breakfast yesterday. Perhaps the leader could provide some clarity on what further broken promises she's referring to. Can I also ask that the government sends ministers to answer urgent questions who can actually provide answers? Many important questions on national security went unanswered this morning in the urgent question relating to the sacking of the Home Secretary. Sorry, resignation, was it? Mr Deputy Speaker, out of touch, out of ideas, unable to govern, too busy trying to get through an hour by hour, minute by minute, worsening Tory psychodrama, rather than focusing, I see it's happening in front of my very eyes, on the serious issues facing all our constituents, not just mine, theirs as well. They've crashed the economy, they've left working people to pick up the bill, and now they're falling apart. This is a Tory crisis made in Downing Street. They're letting everyone down. The Prime Minister has clearly lost the confidence of her party, and her party's lost the confidence of the country. It is time for a general election so that a Labour government can deliver a fresh start for the British people.
Yeah. Leader.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. And can I start by thanking the Speaker for his statement at the start of business, which I do wholeheartedly endorse. We have ways of organising ourselves in a party system in this place, but ultimately we are all individuals making judgments about what is in the best interests of the country and our constituents. And sometimes votes are about more than the issue that has been debated. Last night's Labour motion was an attempt to seize control of proceedings, and we all know that that was deliberately done to enable campaigns today about members' views on fracking, and to spark the usual social media outrage, and I know that Twitter has taken down some accounts today. This is standard operating procedure by Labour, and many members on this side of the House have worked hard to ensure that fracking is rightly not imposed on their community, and it is by their efforts that fracking is not in their community, and it is the government's policy that to allow fracking where there is consent. And if we want to take the temperature down in this place, I suggest we take the temperature down outside of this place too. I'm happy to go on record to say that I am against bullying both in Parliament and outside it too, and I hope that is the view of all members of this House. The country does need stability and it needs calm. And I'm glad to say that is the effect that the Chancellor is having. Market functioning has improved, borrowing costs have been lowered, and the pound is strengthening. But there is more to do. Despite the very volatile global economic conditions, the economy remains resilient. Unemployment is at its lowest level for nearly 50 years, and the UK is forecast to have the fastest growth in the G7 this year. Elsewhere, good work is going on in government too, in contrast to the picture painted by the Honourable Lady opposite. Just this week, the Lord Chancellor has opened up the legal aid system to make it easier for victims of domestic abuse to get access to free legal aid and representation. We've had huge wins in the Department for Trade, 100 million trade win for the drinks industry and huge infrastructure project wins. We've announced nearly 800 million to support research centres with breakthrough new treatments, 180 million to support children's development in their early years. DWP has launched a new service which helps businesses support members of their workforce who have a disability or become sick. Earlier this week, we passed the Energy Prices Bill, removing the worry for households and businesses of their energy costs. And we are introducing the Transport Strikes Bill, providing protection for the travelling public who rely on rail services to get to work or go about their daily lives. I hope that the Labour Party will back us and the fed-up commuters to protect those services. Honourable members opposite have been running around saying in office but not in power all this week, and I think that's probably a more accurate description of Labour's relationship with their trade union paymasters. We are getting on with the job, and further business will be announced in the usual way.
And representing the chair of the Backbench Business Committee, Bob Blackman.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. The chairman of the Backbench Business Committee, the honourable member for Gateshead, is indisposed, so he's asked me to report back. In addition to the business that my right honourable friend has announced, on Tuesday morning there will be a debate in Westminster Hall on baby loss and safe staffing in maternity care, and in Westminster Hall next Thursday there will be debates on Colleges Week and World Menopause Day, all subjects of which I think colleagues will wish you to debate. And on Tuesday the 1st of November, provided the Madam Deputy Speaker agrees, there will be a debate on the importance of religious education in modern Britain. Mr Deputy Speaker, we have a queue of debates requiring chamber time, so I'm very grateful to my right honourable friend for announcing further dates for the Backbench Business Committee, but can I also say that we are short of debates that will go into Westminster Hall on Thursdays. So if colleagues wish to get a debate from us, I would encourage them to apply for Westminster Hall debates. Now, Mr Deputy Speaker, on Monday it's Diwali. Hindus, Sikhs and Jains will be celebrating Diwali in the time-honoured fashion. So can I call on my right honourable friend to join with me in wishing everyone Shubh Diwali and Nutan Vashna Abhinandan for Wednesday and the Hindu New Year.
Well, I'm very happy to join with my honourable friend in wishing everyone happy Diwali and thank him for the update that he has given to this House on backbench business and stressing the importance of getting those debates. The topics, the issues that colleagues have put forward show that this is a much helpful innovation and I would urge colleagues to apply for those debates.
Deirdre Brock.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I too wish everyone a very happy Diwali for when it comes. It's good to see the leader still in her place, Mr Deputy Speaker, but perhaps this is our last exchange, for who knows who next will be asked to close their eyes, think of Britain and become the next Prime Minister. Given the jacket of the current incumbent is clearly on a sugarglue peg, I think she should go for it. The 1922 committee chair has entered number 10 reportedly just now, so if it were done when 'tis done, then 'twere well it were done quickly. Or it may be that after the latest developments in the government's implosion, including a resignation from a great office of state, still the former Home Secretary fulfills that dream of making the front page of the Telegraph, that the leader's party is running out of candidates for the job and she'll simply assume it. Assuming, that is, she still wants to inherit this Icarus economy, so spectacularly burned and crashed by the government, leading to IMF and Bank of England interventions, as if the UK was a rudderless economy with no one at the wheel. Which, come to think of it, does seem to be the course Britain is set on now, Mr Deputy Speaker, with all of us having been treated as economic laboratory mice trapped within the deluded constructs of libertarian think tanks. A debate on some sort of compulsory training for government ministers on the basics basics of economics might be helpful. But, Mr Deputy Speaker, many of us in here and outside this place are finding it a bit of a struggle to keep up with events. So can we have a statement, please, on exactly who the current members of the government are just now? And I believe the government's bringing in legislation today mounting further attacks on trade unions and introducing a minimal level of service guarantee for the rail network. Surely it's time we brought in a minimum level of service guarantee for Westminster governments. And while we're at it, a debate on molestation, reflections and intimidations, as outlined in Erskine May, might prove useful. In the 18th century, as I'm sure the Bayes Secretary knows only too well, insulting or menacing members or trying by force to influence them in their conduct in Parliament was roundly condemned and considered a contempt. The time is clearly ripe for refresher courses. Look, Mr Deputy Speaker, the temptation is always to have a bit of fun with these weekly jousts over the political soap opera, but there's in fact very little room for amusement this week. I am all too conscious of the millions of people who are still looking to this place to provide them with some reassurance. Those in charge have a clear idea of the problems they face and know what to do to sort them. All four nations are looking on aghast at the shambles this government has created for itself, but far more seriously for all of our citizens. The attractions of an independent Scotland, free of this burrock of a place, grow ever greater. General election now.
Well, Mr Deputy Speaker, I'm actually quite cheered by what the Honourable Lady says, because I'd always thought the expression was close your eyes and think of England. Given that she asked us to close our eyes and think of Britain, I think I'm starting to make some progress with the Honourable Lady. I'm sorry that she didn't mention any of the economic support that we have put through this House this week to the citizens in Scotland. But I have to tell her, as we prepare for a statement on the 31st of October, there is a policy being touted that I'm afraid to say would cost every single person in Scotland £2,184. I don't know what the Right Honourable Lady's views would be on that matter, whether she would be for or against a policy that would take £2,184 off every individual in Scotland. The Honourable Lady looks confused. Let me help her out. She is for such a policy because that is the price of her divided policies.
Sir Roger Gay. Roger.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Mr Deputy Speaker, one of the finer legacies of the last administration and of the 2019 Conservative election manifesto was our commitment to animal welfare. Would my right honourable friend confirm that that commitment is still firmly in place, and would she therefore find time as swiftly as possible to bring forward the remaining stages of the Kept Animals Bill?
Well, I thank my right honourable friend for reminding us of the track record we have in this area. As an independent nation, we are now able to go further than ever on animal welfare. We have banned the live export of animals for fattening and slaughter. We have legislated for animal sentience, and we are building an animal welfare into our independent trade policy. Other business will be announced in the usual way, but the honourable gentleman has those assurances, and he should be confident when he looks at our track record.
Chris Bryant.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. I want to ask about brain injury, because yesterday morning I hosted a round table here with lots of people who've been engaged in the issue around concussion in sports. You may have seen recent stories about rugby players, football players who are suffering from depression, anxiety, a whole series of different mental health complaints, and many have suicidal or dementia problems resulting from subconcussive events. So not even when they've been knocked out, but repeated shaking or minor blows to the head. Can we have a debate on what the government's going to do about this, when we're going to have proper protocols for all sports so that we protect every single child, especially as their brain is developing?
Well, I thank the honourable gentleman for raising that. I will certainly raise this with both the Department for Health and also the Department for Education as well. But he will know how to apply for a debate.
Nick Yeager.
Deputy Speaker, Currently, organisations like the government-funded Energy Savings Trust are providing excellent advice to households up and down the country on how to save energy and also then save money on their bills. I think it's time that we also did similar advice for businesses, and I'm working with business leaders throughout the two cities, including Kate Nichols of UK Hospitality and Kate Hart from Central London Business Improvement Districts on this matter. Would my right honourable friend join me in encouraging businesses across the country to take steps to be more energy efficient? And does she agree with me that perhaps we should be looking at the House of Commons on its energy consumption too?
Well, I thank the Honourable Lady for her excellent question, which I shall make sure that the Secretary of State hears, and to thank her. The campaign she describes, I think, would be extremely useful to many businesses. Quite often, small differences in behaviour can lead to massive savings in energy, but also business costs as well.
Anna McMurran.
Thank you. What I witnessed yesterday in the entrance to the voting lobby was an absolute disgrace. A clearly, visibly distressed Tory MP being forced against his will and bullied, manhandled into the voting chamber. So I know this government is disintegrating in front of our very eyes, but this is a challenge to democracy. Will the Leader of the House make an urgent statement against this sort of bullying and support the investigation that is now clearly needing to take place?
Well, I would refer the Honourable Lady to what I said at the start of my remarks today. The Speaker made a statement which I completely support what he said. Of course, everyone in this chamber would condemn bullying, both, I hope, outside of this chamber, but also within it too. But what I would say to the Honourable Lady is the situation is not helped if people don't make specific allegations. Any member of this House who has seen bad conduct or who has been the victim of bad conduct must be able to come forward and report that and it be investigated. I'm not aware of any such substantiated allegations at all. And I'm afraid I would say to the Honourable Lady, if she wants to help the situation, think about what she could do to assist that situation. And I would ask her to check that against her behaviour today.
Well, I know.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Can I ask my right honourable friend if she will find time in this chamber for a debate about the modernisation of the land registry? Currently, if an identity thief steals your identity and uses it to transfer the title of your house, there is a very protracted, long-winded mechanism that ends up in a tribunal, which may well at the end of it not see your house returned to you. This has happened to one of my constituents. He has lost a home that he spent many months investing in time, in cash, and indeed in his own hard labour renovating it, only to let it to tenants who stole his identity and then used it to transfer the title. He is struggling to get that property back, and it strikes me that the land registry procedures, where it's simply impossible to transfer a title back, are outdated and very much in need of updating.
Well, I have to say, I've heard about the case that the Right Honourable Lady has been working on behalf of her constituents. It's absolutely appalling. To be robbed of any property is bad enough, but one's home, which you have put your heart and soul into, you may have brought up a family there, it's really incredibly distressing. I know that my Right Honourable friend has been doing a huge amount to put a rocket up the land registry. I want to assist her in doing that, and I will write to the Secretary of State, but she also will know there are questions on Tuesday and she should raise that there.
Christine Jardine.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I've raised concerns recently with the Home Office and the Ministry of Defence about a 13-year-old girl living in my constituency, separated from her family in Afghanistan, despite assurances that they were given at the time when they assisted the forces in Afghanistan. So I wonder if the leader could advise me on how I might go about raising this with the Minister directly, and whether we could have some time in the Chamber to debate the ARAP scheme and its progress.
Well, I'm very sorry to hear about that case. The Honourable Lady will know how she can apply for a debate, and she may wish to work with other colleagues to do that. But if she passes the details of that case to my office, I will write on her behalf and ask for a meeting with the Minister.
David Mundell.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. My right honourable friend may have heard many of the tributes which were paid to the late Dame Angela Lansbury, who sadly passed away last week. Most of those tributes focused on her acting and singing prowess and, of course, her legendary character Jessica Fletcher in Murder, She Wrote. But is my right honourable friend aware that Angela Lansbury was one of the first champions of the fight against AIDS? And particularly in the 1980s, when many celebrities shied away from the issue, she was in the vanguard of fundraising. And she famously said, "We will never give up on the fight until the fight is won." But does my right honourable friend accept that that fight will not be won unless the United Kingdom and others come forward to replenish the global fund to fight AIDS, because that is the only way in which we are going to achieve Dame Angela's objective?
Well, I thank my right honourable friend for and join with him in the tribute that he pays to the late Angela Lansbury. I did know that about her. She was a stalwart and someone that really changed views towards that particular disease. I can tell him that the government has restated its commitment to the Global Fund, and we will make an announcement on our pledge in the coming weeks.
Stephen Doughty.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. The problem with the chaos in the government is that, of course, it delays getting answers to real-world problems that our constituents are facing. And one of those that my constituents in the Hayes Point apartments in Surrey have been struggling to get an answer on is when they will get payments from the Energy Bills Support Scheme, because they come under what's called the Alternative Fund, which is for those who don't have a direct relationship with an electricity supplier. I've been trying to get answers from the Business Department on this. They haven't had their money like others have up and down the country. Could she urgently chase an answer and a statement from the Secretary of State for Business Energy on this, so that they know when they're going to get their support with their energy bills?
Thank you. Well, this support is enormous and it is most welcome, but people need to know how the schemes work, and I know the honourable gentleman appreciates that they are complex schemes. I will certainly follow this up with the department and ensure that members are given information that is easily understandable for their constituents.
Anna Foe.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Look, this weekend, Southend came together to commemorate my successor, Sir David Amess. So with that in mind, would my right honourable friend agree to a debate on the transformative effect of music on those with learning difficulties and disabilities? In Southend, we have not only the Love to Sign Choir, but the International Music Man Project, recording its first ever single today with the Royal Marines brand. Will my right honourable friend and the whole House help make this the Christmas #1 for all that it does to help those with learning difficulties overcome barriers and to the benefit of us all, and overcome huge challenges in their life?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for raising this and paying tribute to our dearly missed late colleague, Sir David Amess. The Music Man Project is an incredible organisation. The Christmas single that she mentions is available now to download. Their first live performance is tonight at the Painted Hall in Greenwich, accompanied by the Royal Marines band. And I have to say, I was very privileged to go to their first rehearsal, and it was one of the most amazing experiences I've had. I have video of the effect of these two organisations coming together, and it was an amazing thing and the lasting legacy of our late colleague.
Here. Barry Sheeran.
Mr Deputy Speaker, I know that the Leader of the House is new to the role, and I know she has a great combative style, but I hope she'll reflect on what she said to my honourable friend, the member for Cardiff North, because I think she was very unfair in her response. But on forthcoming business, she knows that all of us will be very busy as members of Parliament, as I am in Huddersfield, working with a whole network of charities, local people, local organisations, because it's going to be a long, hard winter for so many people who are not going to be able to afford to heat the house, not able to feed the family, and support groups will have to be organised. Could she make sure that we get the right ministers here, DCLG or whichever, to talk about how the government can help us with the resources to build that network and resources so that we can provide that food, provide those warm spaces, and so MPs can actually roll up their sleeves and help.
Well, on that latter point, I can certainly raise this with the key departments involved. So much of this is about sharing good practice. There will be organisations that will be working across several areas around the country, and picking up good practice and sharing it is incredibly important.
Justin Tomlinson.
Drama, suspense, whodunit? No, Mr. Speaker, not here, but in cinemas up and down the country. Great entertainment, key part of our social fabric. And for the whips, an opportunity for people to be somewhere where they can turn their phones off. Will the Leader of the House find time to debate the importance of the exclusivity window for new films in this changing entertainment landscape?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his very witty question. I shall certainly raise this with the relevant department.
George Howard.
The Leader of the House will be aware that one of the important principles of our constitutional arrangements is the principle of the mandate. Given that the government's mandate derived from the last general election manifesto has now either been abandoned or exhausted, isn't it really time that we had a general election?
Yeah. When it would have been in this country's interest to have a general election when this Parliament was in paralysis due to Brexit before the 2019 general election, the Honourable Gentleman's Party blocked it. So I'm not going to take any lessons to him on that front. We stood on a manifesto that we are delivering, but that work is not yet done, and we will continue to deliver the manifesto that gave us this sizable majority.
Brickcliffe.
Speaker, grassroots clubs and sports are vital to communities like mine in Hyndburn and Hassenden. I've got some fantastic clubs like Huncourt United and the Wildcats, but they do need support to make sure that they've got the vital screen spaces that they need to train, but also the funding to exist. So could we allow a debate in government time on how we continue to support grassroots clubs and sports?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for raising this important issue. I shall certainly flag what she has said today with the relevant department. She will know how to apply to a debate, and I think it will be a very well attended one if she secures it.
Jeff Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Pavement parking is a massive problem in South Manchester. It's a difficult problem to solve. We need the power that London has to introduce a default ban. Now, last week, the Secretary of State, who happily has just joined the front bench, said it was a priority for her and would bring forward the legislation we need as soon as parliamentary time allows. So can I ask the leader to work with her colleague to make that happen? I think it would be a relatively simple thing to do and would be widely welcomed.
Yeah. Well, to save my civil servants some work and some paper, I shall put it on record to Hansard that I will ensure that the relevant Secretary of State hears what the honourable gentleman has raised.
John Lamont.
Nicola Sturgeon confirmed this week she's pushing for a hard border between Scotland and the rest of the United Kingdom. The SNP's new economic policies would cost businesses a fortune and recklessly risk people's jobs. So does the Leader of the House agree we should have a debate on this issue so the SNP can finally tell the people of Scotland the truth about the enormous economic damage that Nicola Sturgeon's plan for a hard border would do to Scotland?
Well, I thank my honourable friend. Yes, I'm afraid this is the latest wheeze from the SNP to risk jobs and burn taxpayers' money. Let us not forget, this is the party that during the pandemic hired a testing firm at the cost of £10 million that promptly furloughed all of its staff. In fairness to them, they did try and guarantee some jobs. They paid a company the tune of £5 million per job and then failed to secure any of those jobs. Audit Scotland said of the Scottish Government it had no framework to deal with the private sector. And of course, the most spectacular is the fact that they have paid the cost of 24 ferries for just 2 vessels.
Peter Hobhouse.
Mr Deputy Speaker, MPs should be allowed to vote according to their judgment and without being harassed or bullied. Can she clarify what happened in the No lobby according to her observations? And does she agree with me that yesterday's event throws a very bad light on the professionalism of this our Parliament?
Well, can I say that I agree with the Honourable Lady, and as I set out in my earlier remarks, we have a way of organising ourselves in this place, but we are elected by our constituents to look after their interests and the interests of this country. I have to say that I was in the lobby last night. I did not see any of that has been reported, but there are processes for reporting these things and for looking at them. And I'm sure if you will have heard Mr. Speaker's statement earlier today, I think he is right. That is the right approach.
Selene Saxby.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Nitrous oxide capsules have littered North Devon beaches this summer as more and more people are using them for recreational purposes, despite the risks such as damage to the lungs, halting breathing and slowing the heart to a dangerous level. Manufacturers this week have called for further restrictions on its purchase. Can I ask if the Government may consider this recommendation and restrict sales for recreational use?
Can I thank my honourable friend for shining a spotlight on this important issue, and clearly an issue of great concern to her constituents. Given concerns about the use of nitrous oxide, particularly by young people, the former Home Secretary sought advice from the Independent Advisory Council on the misuse of drugs, and when they respond, the Government will consider their advice carefully and inform the House.
There's a huge problem across my constituency of youths razzing around the streets on motorbikes, sometimes stolen, riding without helmets, pulling stunts, putting other road users and pedestrians in danger. I was accompanied by Councillor Alison Gwynn to a meeting with Chief Superintendent Davis on Friday. The Denton South councillors Reid, Newton and Naylor had a packed public meeting on Monday about this, and Audenshaw councillors Smith and Martin are still picking up the consequences of a 16-year-old boy coming off his bike and sadly losing his life. This is serious. It comes down to a very resource-intensive programme to tackle it. Can we have a statement from the new Home Secretary that this government takes these issues seriously and will give Greater Manchester Police and other police forces the tools that they need to tackle this scourge on our streets?
Well, I'm very sorry to hear about that situation, and particularly that tragic loss of life. The honourable gentleman is right. It's a whole community approach to this. I will certainly make sure what he has said today is flagged with the Home Secretary.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I welcome the Chancellor of the Exchequer's statement earlier this week, which set out a realistic approach to dealing with our financial challenges. But my right honourable friend will be aware that that causes concerns about funding for a whole range of schemes. My 2 local authorities are very concerned about their levelling up bids. Can the Leader of the House give an assurance that when the Chancellor makes his statement on the 31st, it will be accompanied by clarification as to existing projects?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for raising this. I know the huge amount of work he has done on the levelling up agenda in his constituency. I will certainly make sure the Chancellor has heard what he has said today, and I will also make sure that the Secretary of State for Levelling Up has heard his words too.
Oswald.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. It's estimated that between 2.5% and 4% of people, adults and children, have ADHD. neurodiversity matters, and all of us benefit the more that that's realised and understood. So I wonder if the Leader of the House would agree to a debate in government time on the importance of fostering greater knowledge and awareness and understanding of neurodiverse conditions, and thank the groups working hard to provide support and information, especially during October, which is ADHD Awareness Month.
Well, I thank the Honourable Lady for raising this important point, and I do join with her in thanking the large number of organisations who do work to ensure that families have the advice and support that they need. I shall certainly flag this with the number of departments that will be looking at this particular issue, and I would encourage her as well to raise it in questions.
Bob Seeley.
Speaker, I welcome very much the minimum service levels which are going to be outlined in upcoming legislation. Can the Leader of the House please tell me if she would support, as part of that, minimum service levels on lifeline services such as the Solent ferries, where we have both the RMT and Unite?
I heard approval noises coming from my colleague on the front bench with me, but I would also point him to this government's record during the pandemic. And we very much saw those particular services as needing support, and we followed that up with action. But I thank him for his very helpful suggestion, which has gone down well with my colleague.
Paul Blomfield.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Sunshine Preschool, which serves families on some of the lowest incomes in my constituency, is facing closure. Several other constituents have written to me as their children have had their nursery places withdrawn due to staff shortages and funding problems, and clearly this is a national problem. It's not a question, as the government seems to think, of ratios of staff to children, but the failure of funded early learning rates to keep up with costs. So can we have a debate on the crisis in childcare to urge ministers to bring forward proper support for this vital social provision, which is so important not only to parents, but to supporting economic growth?
Well, the Honourable Gentleman is absolutely right. These are incredibly important services for the children themselves and their development, and also to support families, but they are absolutely critical to enable people to remain in work and to progress through work. I shall certainly raise this issue. I know it is a matter that is a concern across the House with the Department for Education, and I also know that the work the government has been doing on early years to take a more holistic approach to all of this and make sure it's doing what parents really need it to do will also, the colleagues involved in that will also want to hear the Honourable Gentleman's remarks.
Andy Carter.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Can I join with my honourable friend, the member for Harrow, in wishing all members of the Hindu community in Warrington South a very happy Diwali. I recently met with many members of that community who expressed concerns about recent events in the Midlands. Can the Leader assure my constituents that the safety of all communities is a priority for the government and they should enjoy in their communities festival?
So we're going to get another unelected leader.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for raising this. I do join with the remarks that he made, and especially to all those in his constituency.
Clive Efford.
My constituents are really concerned about cuts to their train services that have been allowed under powers that were introduced during COVID. The Secretary of State has allowed South Eastern trains to make major alterations to its timetable using those powers, even though we are out of COVID now. So can we have a statement from the Secretary of State to explain why these powers have been allowed to be abused in this way and why my constituents are losing train services?
Well, I thank the honourable gentleman for his remarks. My right honourable friend will have heard them, but I will formally follow up with the department.
Benjamin O'Hara.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'd like to draw the Leader of the House attention, indeed the whole House attention, to Early Day Motion 480, which was published this morning. It congratulates Daroon Grammar School, which yesterday was awarded the 2022 World's Best School Prize in the Community Collaboration category. I hope to arrange a visit to this Parliament very soon from the school, But before that, would the leader join me in sending her congratulations to head teacher David Mitchell, his staff and all the pupils of Dunoon Grammar School on this remarkable achievement, which you can imagine is a source of huge pride for the town, indeed everyone in Argyll and Bute, and is a real triumph for Scottish education.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I'm going to enter into the spirit of his question and not comment in depth about the SNP's track record in education. But what a wonderful achievement, and I do send my congratulations to David Mitchell, all his staff and pupils, and I hope they will celebrate.
Patrick Grady.
Given the Prime Minister's announcement that she intends to stand down, I wonder how wise it is to proceed with much of the business that the Leader of the House has announced for next week, not least the retained European Law Revocation and Reform Bill. It is of massive constitutional significance. It would enact a huge power grab from both this place and the devolved administrations. Given that the bill that created retained EU law, the European Withdrawal Act, was subject to 8 days of scrutiny on the floor of this House in Committee of the Whole House, can, if she is able to make any kind of guarantee whatsoever about the future of the government, given the complete chaos that is now engulfing the Conservative Party, will that bill be subject to scrutiny by a Committee of the Whole House and not just by a Public Bill Committee?
Very important bill which will modernise the statute book, and I would say to the honourable gentleman with regard to other matters, I am going to keep calm and carry on, and I would suggest everyone else do the same.
Thomas.
Mr Deputy Speaker, I take this opportunity to wish all of my constituents getting ready to celebrate next week a very happy Diwali. Can I ask the Leader of the House, she may or may not be aware that there's been a steep decline since 2015 in the number of UK students studying Gujarati, Urdu and other languages prevalent across South Asia at GCSE level. Given the significance of these languages for many British children's educational attainment, and crucially for our ability to maximise our trade and security relationships with India and other countries in South Asia, could we have a debate in government time to explore the reasons for that decline and indeed how we might reverse it?
Well, I thank the honourable gentleman for raising that issue, and I will certainly make sure that the Department for Education has heard what he has said today. He will know very well how to secure a debate, and I thank him for raising the points.
Madam Fellows.
Mr Deputy Speaker, I wish I could take the Leader of the House's advice to keep calm and carry on. But in my role as SNP spokesperson on disabilities, I meet regularly with disabled organisations representing disabled people. This week in Parliament, muscular dystrophy had a drop-in, to which my young parliamentary assistant went, and he came back visibly shocked at the amount of electricity that one young person needed to use to stay alive. With the U-turn by the Chancellor, and with the news we have just received that the Leader of the Conservative Party has just stood down, will there be a statement on the 31st of October? I know it's not in the Leader's gift to tell me exactly, but if there is to be a statement by another Chancellor or the same one, I don't really care which, can we have some kind of guarantee that there will be extra help for people like this? Because it's absolutely imperative. It's life and death to people, and it's life and death to their carers as well.
Well, I thank the Honourable Lady for raising this, because it affords me an opportunity to provide reassurance to people. This was raised last week as well, and I have already written to the Department for Health and other departments on this matter. We want to ensure that people are looked after and taken care of and supported throughout this winter. We're very aware of the additional costs that people with certain health conditions and disabilities are facing. I know this issue is being looked at, and I also want to assure her that I understand people want reassurance fast.
Wendy Chamberlain.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Conscious I'm in the honourable member for Strangford's slot, and although we wish to ask the Leader of the House if she wants to make any statement of intent in relation to her future candidacy for Leader of our party, I do want to focus on comments made by the honourable member for Dumfriesshire, Clydesdale and Tweeddale in relation to the Global Replenishment Fund. When the Government failed to make an announcement on the 21st of September of a pledge, that was really unusual. And now that we're hearing plans of the Government to drop ODA spending even further, I do think we are really stepping back from our global commitments. So can the Leader of the House tell us when that announcement is likely to be made? Is there going to be positive news for the Global Replenishment Fund, and will there be time made for the House to scrutinise it?
Well, at the pledging conference where we did not make a detailed pledge, we did put on record very strongly our commitment to that. I think the issue was that a minister was not available to go, and so the pledge wasn't made. That was, from memory, my understanding. But I would say to the Honourable Lady, this is expected very shortly, and I would point her to our record, which is world-leading on this and other replenishment conferences.
I'd like to thank the Leader of the House for making her statement and responding to many questions. Points of order, Anna McMurran.
Thank you. The Leader of the House just called into question my behaviour when I raised the very serious allegations that I witnessed of bullying and manhandling in the voting lobby last night. I don't think that this is appropriate. Can the Deputy Speaker assure me that there is an improper and full investigation into this